Okay, riding my motorcycle in the rain. Why do I do it? Well, a couple of years ago I sold my vehicle and put some money aside, and right now I'm saving about $400 a month without a vehicle, and that money goes to pay for one of my children's room and board in college. So simply put, it's a matter of money. If it weren't for that, my first advice to anyone would be, if you don't have to ride in this sort of weather, don't do it. But a lot of people, well, not a lot, but some people kind of watch me on the ADV website and on the VTech website, and they know that I'm a full-time rider, and I get questions and about from other folks who are thinking about doing what I'm doing. So this is something you need to consider if you decide you're going to give up your cage slash automobile or truck and ride a motorcycle full time. Fortunately for me, there's probably maybe 15 days a year when I have to ride in these conditions. Right now today it's raining, kind of like a steady water your yard type of a rain. It's not a downpour. And my advice to most people would be, if you don't have to ride in this sort of weather, don't do it. And if you're going to get a motorcycle, it's helpful to have a vehicle as well. So on days like today, you just stay off the bike. But in my case, I have to brave it. Like Clint Eastwood said, a man's got to know his limitations, and there are times when I will pull off the road and wait it out a little bit, or try to rearrange my schedule to avoid that type of weather. But today I was busy at work and I had to be there, and so here I go. I'm going to talk about risk multipliers, and hopefully as you watch this video I can point some of them out and you might find it helpful. Risk multipliers, simply riding a motorcycle on the road as opposed to driving a vehicle in itself, is a risk multiplier. But when you're on the road in this type of weather, risk multipliers go way up, and you've got to be smart and think about what you're doing a whole lot more and give yourself better advantages. So today the first advantage I'm giving myself is I'm not taking the freeway, because the higher your speed on a wet road, the higher your risk multipliers go up. And you know, probably the most common type of accident you're going to see in conditions like this is a motorcycle gets in a position where it has to brake hard and takes what I call the big slide. In my younger days, when I rode a lightweight dirt bike with knobby tires in weather like this, I took the big slide a couple of times. On a heavier cruiser with good rubber tires, street tires, you've got not great but better conditions on the road. One thing I learned recently that I didn't realize, I started to replace my front tire and not the back tire, and my service guy told me he knew I was going to different tires. I didn't like the stock factory tires, and he said, well, the way tires are designed for a motorcycle, you need to keep them the same, because the front tire actually breaks up the water pattern and helps the back tire get a better grip on a wet road. So I replaced the front tire that I sort of needed and a back tire that I probably didn't need for another 2,000 or 3,000 miles. But if you're going to ride on these kind of road conditions, another risk multiplier is the condition of your motorcycle, especially the tires. I mean, if you don't have good tires on your bike, forget about it. The second thing I want to talk about here, and you'll see it as I'm coming up on this stoplight, is control your speed. Keep your motorcycle at lower RPMs, and as much as possible decelerate by downshifting to coming up on a stop. Use the front brake as sparingly as possible, and the back brake more as needed. Give yourself space from the vehicle in front of you. Be really careful of these white painted arrows and stripes on the road because they are very slippery and on a wet condition. And in fact, this whole intersection here is way more slippery than once I get about 100 yards through this light, because as these cars sit here on the road, the exhaust and any of them dripping any fluids, it pools here, and there's actually not much in this kind of a condition to remove that or push it to the side of the road. Also, probably the first 15 or 20 minutes after a rain starts, I would stay off the road because those fluids are mixing with the water. They haven't been pushed away by people's tires, and they're well, there you go. I'm not ready to talk about inconsiderate drivers yet, but there's the first one that I encountered today. But anyway, being mindful of the fluids that collect on the road are an important risk multiplier. You have to deal with that a certain way. Here's another risk multiplier. You see these cars turning out from the car dealer here. You've got to put your life in someone else's hands to some extent, especially on road conditions like this, because lateral moves on a motorcycle are not particularly safe. And so you've got to assume that the other people on the road with you are idiots, and a percentage of them are. And you've got to think ahead of them and give yourself room to maneuver probably 4 times ahead of what you normally would. On good road conditions, I can slalom with these cars with the best of them. Now here comes another risk multiplier. Notice the light's green, but I still check over my shoulder to make sure there's not any traffic coming through that intersection late, because they just won't be able to slow down or stop like they normally would. There's another one of those white stripes I was telling you about to be careful of, and I'm going to stop in here and come back to the video shortly. Okay, going back to my risk multiplier syndrome. Another risk multiplier are bad habits in general. That little turn onto the road there I just made, normally on a dry road condition, I may not have come to a complete stop at that stop sign. I might have rolled through it, but you know, think about what you're doing. If the road's wet, go ahead and come to a complete stop. You know, intersections are where a lot of accidents happen, and if you're stopped, you're in a better position to deal with what's coming than if you're still rolling, especially when it's wet. Because again, remember, you can't lock the brakes and just stop your bike on a dime on a wet road like you can on a good road. Another thing, as I'm coming up to this intersection here, notice that I try to not cross that white line. I'm right up on it, but I've seen myself 2 accidents at this intersection, and on a wet road, if 2 cars collide at any kind of speed coming through an intersection, they're going to slide somewhere, and the better distance you give yourself from the intersection, the safer you're going to be if a collision happens at this stoplight right ahead of you. So I've covered a few important things that give you better advantages. Now I'm going to talk about lane position and lane selection. If you remember back there on the feeder street, I was in the middle lane. There's a couple of reasons for that. It gives me a little bit better maneuvering capability for traffic that was entering the feeder street, and also it kind of keeps me out of the way of people coming off the freeway, which usually they're just coming too fast. My hopes are that people who watch this video that aren't motorcycle riders, that just drive cars and may have an interest in it, kind of put themselves in my seat a little bit here and see what I actually have to deal with. To some extent, and I don't like this part, but I have to depend on people using their own good judgment and common sense when they're behind the wheel on a wet road. And there's already been a couple of examples in this video on my short ride to work of how many people actually don't do that. Again, if you're riding the bike, you've got to try to anticipate stupidity. If you're driving the car, you've got to ask yourself, how are you going to feel about yourself if you're being stupid and you kill somebody out on the highway because you're in a bit of a hurry, or you're using your iPhone or talking on your cell phone? Total ignorance. That's my rant there. But on a 2-lane road like this one, I try to stay in the left lane because water tends to pool on the side there, and motorcycles hydroplane very easily. So, I'm choosing the best road position that I possibly can to keep me away from any pooling water. And I try to stay on either the right or the left side of the lane that I'm in because, again, the tires are pushing any kind of exhaust fumes or fluids that drip from vehicles toward the center of the lane or the side of the road. So there I am. I'm in the right part of the left lane. That's just where I feel comfortable today. Another thing you've got to watch out for is these white dots. For example, if I wanted to move into my right lane, what I would do is I would first position my bike to the left part of the lane I'm in, and I would give myself a better right angle coming across those white dots, because if you just try to slide over and you don't happen to get between the placement of those dots just right, those dots will throw you. They're very slippery, just like the white paint on the road. There's a lot of expert riders out there making YouTube videos, and I'm pretty conservative. I'm not a young guy anymore, and I like to try to not break any bones. So some of you people watching this video might think I'm more conservative than you are, but when you've got your life on two wheels, you just kind of have to put your own value on it. And like I say, I consider risk multipliers, and I try to give myself the best advantage, whatever I'm doing on a motorcycle, even in good road conditions. I still have some bad habits, but for the most part, I'd like to think that I ride safe. Now, if any of you are coming to watch this video and I've left something out that you think is important, or the tips that you have to help keep you safer on a wet road, please leave them in the comment box, because I can always learn. I've been riding all my life, but the day I stop learning is probably the day that I'll make a mistake. The next thing that I would like to say is another good risk multiplier to watch out for if you do ride a motorcycle on a wet road is turn off your electronic devices and give the road 100% of your attention, because you don't have the time to react on a wet road that you have on a good road surface. I'm coming up on the end of my video here, but just a couple of more things. Be sure that to use your turn signals if you have them. If you don't, you should use hand signals, and hopefully you know what those are because you took your road test for your license. You need to give on this section of road here, there's been a lot of fatalities. This section of road moves really fast. I think 2 people have died right in front of the office where I'm at. And so by using your turn signals, you're giving the people, especially behind you, a little bit of notice of what your intentions are going to be. There's a guy behind me here that you can't see, but I see him putting the hammer down. I'm already a bit concerned, and I'm not going to be able to take the exit off of this road like I would like to show you, because I can already see that I'm going to have to get out of his way. I've put my indicator on. I'm getting ready to give him a hand signal to try to tell him to slow down coming up behind me. And I've got to exit this road on a metal grate that even on a dry road surface is slippery, especially in the morning when there's dew on it. So hopefully some of what I've talked about here will help you if you have to ride in the rain like I do. And if you drive a car, I'm also hoping that it's going to kind of help you anticipate the limitations of a motorcycle on a wet road surface, because we need your help too. I want to thank anyone who watched this video with me. I appreciate your interest and concern. Thanks for visiting. Please, again, don't hesitate to leave comments, thoughts, or ideas, and hope to see you back again. Have a great day.